this, let's bring in Daniel Kreeger, Executive Director and co-founder of the Association of Climate Change Officers. Daniel, great having you. First up, with tens of millions of Americans under warnings, how would you evaluate the readiness level of the country right now?
You know, I think this is a telltale story of the communities that have gone through this experience before and are used to it already because of lessons learned. The communities that haven't are more than likely going to get caught off guard, just like we saw in Texas a couple of years ago.
I see, and with flights grounded, highways shut down, supply chains actually very strained. Could you help us understand which implications this has for like ordinary people beyond just, staying home?
Well, it's more complicated than that because it's a total disruption of communities. You reported earlier about the disruption of schools, for example,
Mhm.
airports. So people can't get from one place to another, but it's not just in the air that they can't get there. It's in their local community. So it's affecting local commerce, access to food, access to emergency care. Because roads are not going to be passable. I mean, everything's on the line here in terms of the basic continuity of the way our communities and our businesses function.
And Daniel, ice, snow, sub-zero wind paralyze huge regions. At what point does extreme weather become a national security issue? Can you help us gauge what the tipping points may be?
Well, I'm not sure what the government threshold on this would be, but if I'm looking at almost half of American states being impacted by a single system, if I'm looking at the number of billion-dollar extreme events that we've been looking on an annual basis, the number of people who are impacted, whatever your metric is,
Yeah.
I got to think that common sense here says we're looking at dollars, volumes of disruption, volumes of people at risk, and critical infrastructure systems offline, and vulnerabilities exposed. All of those things to me would be metrics for saying this should be a national security issue. And the challenge is that when we leave local communities to do this on their own, there's not sufficient resources in each community. So this has to be a national scale issue to deal with in terms of preparedness and resilience.
And digging deeper on this, are our emergency alerts and response systems actually built for yesterday's storms, not today's extremes? Is it fair to say that? Yes, no, why?
I'm what I'm seeing in reporting here and with some of the other events lately. I think about the flooding from the hurricane in Tampa. I think in a lot of places in the country, I think the alert system and the heads up, particularly in communities that have gone through something akin to this or something akin to another disaster, whether it's ice, water, fire. I think our warning systems are not. That's not my biggest concern. My biggest concern is not the warning system, but the capability to endure and recover. One of the things that we've heard in the news over this week is there's a salt shortage. Well, that's not an alert issue, but if we don't have the salts to get these streets clear, then we don't have the ability for people to move from one place to another for emergency access and such, and for transportation systems that are crucial for normal functionality. So what I want to see is better preparedness, better resilience in our infrastructure and our communities, and of course you can always get better at communicating when these things are coming.
And experts warn about another mass of cold air stacked after this one, right? And if this big chill is a preview of sorts, right? What happens when the next shock stacks on top of this one?
Well, and sometimes those shocks aren't the exact same type of shock. Those cascading impacts here are the kinds of things that really create challenges. When you're, for lack of a better description, wargaming or shredding for these sorts of things, you have a tendency to look at them individually, an ice storm, a wildfire, or a flood, a COVID type event. But what happens when they stack up on top of each other? That kind of preparedness is really important to navigate on the front end, to think through, well, what would happen if two of these things were hitting at the same time, whether it's the same type of disaster or a different type. These can be really debilitating. So to this point in this storm, you've got a second surge coming immediately afterwards. So it's important for people to recognize that they're going to have to be durable throughout this. They're not going to be able to go right out right away. Systems are going to be compromised, so they need to be able to weather out 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 days potentially, depending on their areas, to withstand this event.
Daniel Kreeger, thank you for your insights. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.